Teaching through questioning, examining how pedagogical questions elicit learning. Presented at the 2015 Society for Research in Child Development Biennial Conference in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. To teachers, it is a truism that questions are fundamental to learning. While questions are typically thought of as tools used by learners to elicit information from a more knowledgeable source, or even as tools used by teachers to assess what learners know. Also important tools for teaching information. We refer to these types of questions as pedagogical questions. Although much research has been conducted on questions themselves, there is little investigating why pedagogical questions might be a good method to facilitate learning. While the language of a pedagogical question may be the same as a prototypical information-seeking question, the inferences made from them are likely to be different. For instance, take this algebra learning situation. The question, "What do you do with the 4?" will be interpreted differently by a learner, depending on whether it was uttered by a fellow naive learner or by a knowledgeable teacher. While the language of the question is the same, the learner's inference that the teacher is a knowledgeable and helpful source of information leads the learner to recognize the question as a tool to help teach him. In this particular instance, the learner will recognize that to solve for x, the next step involves the 4. So what is going on here? One possibility is that pedagogical questions work similarly to direct instruction. Work examining direct instruction suggests that this type of explicit instruction constrains the sets of hypotheses that a learner considers, as the learner trusts that the teacher is providing information about everything that's important. The learner thus infers that information presented by a knowledgeable and helpful teacher is both sufficient and exhaustive. In a study by Elizabeth Bonowitz, Patrick Shafto, and their colleagues, children who saw an experimenter demonstrate one function of a multifunction toy restricted their exploration of that toy. The authors state that this is likely to occur because learners believe that the teacher would have provided further demonstrations if they were important. This restricted exploration is a double-edged sword, in that children more efficiently learn to use the targeted function. However, they are less likely to explore and discover novel information. Thus, although direct instruction is efficient, it comes at a cost. To explain more about why this is likely to occur, let's turn to a model of social learning. What data the informant, or teacher, selects to present to a learner is based on the teacher's knowledge, her intent to help or hinder the learner, as well as her inferences about the learner, such as what that learner knows, influences the type of data that is selected to present to that learner. And then how the learner interprets that data is influenced by the learner's own knowledge, as well as the inferences the learner has made about the teacher's knowledge and intent. Thus, when a knowledgeable and helpful teacher says, "This is how my toy works," and then demonstrates the function, the learner interprets that information as specifically selected by the teacher to help him solve the problem. Thus, he infers that the demonstrated function is the only important one. Given this, we anticipate that pedagogical questions would be interpreted much in the same way. When a learner infers that a teacher is knowledgeable, the question will be interpreted as pedagogical instead of information-seeking. If pedagogical questions indeed function in this way, then they should differ from typical information-seeking questions in their ability to promote learning of targeted information. Yet, because they're more open-ended, pedagogical questions will also allow the knowledgeable teacher to convey curiosity, which may lead to a learner's increased exploration. For the current study, we set out to examine whether pedagogical questions will lead learners to the correct hypothesis while also promoting curiosity. We were mainly concerned with two outcomes: efficiency, or learning the targeted information and doing so quickly, and exploration, or discovering more novel information. To examine this, we compared pedagogical questions to two other learning situations: direct instruction and information-seeking questions. 77 young children participated, who were between the ages of 4 and 7. Children were tested in an empty room at their school. Two experimenters introduced the participant to this novel toy. The main experimenter said that this toy belonged to her, and thus she knew all about the toy. The other experimenter was described as having never seen the toy before and had absolutely no idea how it worked. The toy was built to have 5 functional components: a squeaker, a turtle in a pipe behind a magnifying glass, a flashing light shaped like a ladybug, which is on the back side of this picture, a tower that lights up, and a magnet that moves between 3 places on the toy. In addition to these functional components, the toy had several inert ones, such as this inert tower in the middle of the toy, and the small pink ball, as well as several erasers and stickers that are glued onto the toy. Importantly, how much information children received about the toy was based on to which condition they were assigned. In the pedagogical question condition, children heard the knowledgeable experimenter say, "Now I'm asking you, what does this button do?" As the knowledgeable experimenter pointed to the tower button. The condition was similar to the pedagogical question condition, in that the experimenter was knowledgeable, but in the direct instruction condition, children were shown a demonstration. We match this condition to the direct instruction condition in Bonowitz and Shafto et al., 2011. The information-seeking question condition was similar to the pedagogical question condition in that the wording was exactly the same. However, given that in the information-seeking question, the question was posed by a naive experimenter, children shouldn't interpret the question as pedagogical. Each condition ended with children being told that it was their turn to play with the toy. Children's play was recorded with a head-mounted camera.
Know when you're done.
Here's video
there, okay?
from the head-mounted camera. Videos were coded by 2 coders who are blind to the hypothesis as well as the conditions. The coders recorded how long children played with each of the main functions and with the toy in general, as well as the number of other functions children found, and the number of unique actions that children tried. Unique actions were actions that children tried to use in an attempt to make something happen with the toy, but that didn't lead to the main 5 functions, such as wiggling that pink ball or moving the inert tower. We were interested in 2 specific measures: efficiency and exploration. Because data collection is ongoing for this study, we currently have 18 children in the direct instruction condition, 30 in the pedagogical question condition, and 29 in the information-seeking question condition. Our first measure of efficiency was the proportion of children who found the target function. We anticipated that children in the 2 teaching conditions, the direct instruction condition and the pedagogical question condition, would find the target function more often than children in the information-seeking question condition. We found that 78% of children in the pedagogical question condition found the targeted function. That is, they turned on the light, the tower light. Whereas with 100% of children in the direct instruction condition and 55% of children in the information-seeking questions condition. And there was a significant difference between the number of children who found it in the direct instruction condition and the number of children who found it in the pedagogical question condition, where it was a trend between the differences between pedagogical question and information-seeking question condition. Importantly, though, well over 50 and even 75% of children in the pedagogical questions condition did indeed find the function. Our second measure of efficiency was the median number of seconds until the target was discovered. We anticipated that children in the two teaching conditions would indeed find the target function much more quickly than children in the information-seeking question condition. Importantly, though, only children who actually found the targeted function were included in this data point. We found that children in the pedagogical questions condition were able to turn the tower light on within 4 seconds of beginning play. This 3 seconds in the direct instruction condition and 6 seconds in the information-seeking question condition, and none of these three conditions vary from one another significantly. Thus, of the children who found the targeted function, they each found it relatively quickly. We also were interested in how children balanced efficiency with exploration. To get at this, we measured the average proportion of their total playtime that they spent with the targeted function. We anticipated that children in the direct instruction condition would spend the largest proportion of their total playtime with the targeted function, whereas because we anticipated that questions model curiosity, we expected that children in the pedagogical questions condition and information-seeking question condition would spend less time playing with the targeted function. Indeed, we found that 21% of children in the pedagogical questions condition spent 21% of their time playing with the targeted function. Children in the direct instruction condition, who spent on average 51% of their time playing with the target, and children in the information-seeking question condition, which spent 20% of their time. And indeed, the difference between the direct instruction and pedagogical questions condition was significant, but there were no differences between the two questions conditions. Our first measurement of exploration, or peer exploration, is the total amount of time that they played with the toy. We anticipated that children in the direct instruction condition would play with the toy for less time than children in the pedagogical questions condition, particularly as their play was restricted. We found that children in the pedagogical questions condition played with the toy for an average of 162 seconds. And while the difference was significant between the direct instruction condition and the pedagogical questions condition, there was no significant difference between the two questions conditions. Our second measure of peer exploration is the average number of other components that children discovered out of 4. Again, our toy had 5 functional components, one of which was the targeted function, the light tower. This measurement looked at how many of the other 4 functions, the ladybug, the magnet, the squeaker, and the turtle in the pipe, that children discovered during their play. We anticipated that children in the pedagogical question would discover more of these components than children in the direct instruction condition. Indeed, we found that children in the pedagogical questions condition discovered about 2 other components on average, 1 in the direct instruction condition and 1.14 in the information-seeking question condition. And it was a significant difference between the pedagogical questions condition and these other 2 conditions. So children in the pedagogical questions condition did seem to find more novel information when exploring the toy. Our final measure of exploration was the average number of other unique actions performed. Again, unique actions being actions tried by children to make something happen with the toy that didn't lead to the main functions, such as the light tower or the ladybug. Children in the pedagogical questions condition tried about 3.73 unique actions on average, 0.44 in direct instruction condition, and 2.24 in the information seeking. And again, like with finding the other components, the pedagogical questions condition was significantly higher than the other 2 conditions. In summary, we find that pedagogical questions do seem to lead to efficient learning. Children in the pedagogical questions condition found the target function, and they did so more often than the information-seeking questions condition, or at least trending towards that, although it was less often than in the direct instruction condition. We found that they also did so quickly, although this was relatively equal between the 3 conditions for the children who actually found the toy. Importantly, though, children in the pedagogical questions condition, they did not restrict their play as much as direct instruction, alleviating some of the double-edged sword difficulties associated with direct instruction. In addition, we found that pedagogical questions seem to increase exploratory behavior. Children in the pedagogical questions condition played longer with the toy. They discovered more components than in the other 2 conditions, and they also tried more unique actions than in the other 2 conditions. One reason that this may be occurring is that pedagogical questions could be functioning as a type of guided learning or guided play, in which learners are active and engaged in the task that they're attending to. However, unlike guided play, learners' attention is being directed by the instructors. It's not coming from their own interests initially. Importantly, learners are considering the mental states of their teachers. In our study, we find differences between the two question conditions in which children are recognizing that the pedagogical question is coming from a knowledgeable and helpful source of information. In sum, in social learning situations, belief about the presenter of the information matters. Prior work demonstrates that teaching by direct instruction constrains children's exploration and discovery. Yet, by posing pedagogical questions, teachers can both limit the hypothesis space to aid in learning while also modeling curiosity, leading to exploration and discovery of new information. I'd like to thank the research assistants with the COCO Sci Labs, as well as the University of Louisville Child Development Studies. This research was supported in part by funding from a National Science Foundation career grant, DRL 1149116, to Dr. Patrick Shafto. For more information, please feel free to contact me, Ashley Landrum, at landrumar@gmail.com. Thank you.